Well, this little wokester, Louks, received her Ph.D. in English Lit on odor oppression, which has garnered 85 million views, unlike my Ph.D. on quantum barrier tunneling in dielectrics, which has garnered about 85 views. Not that I'm bitter. At any rate, this Cambridge student explored the connection between smell and oppression and bathed her dissertation in so much high-falutin prose that it's hard to figure out exactly what she's trying to say. And that may be for the best, because if you take the time to figure it out, you'll find out she isn't saying much. In short, the body of her work doesn't pass the smell test. She missed an opportunity to discuss another phenomenon, essentially how we can associate olfactory revulsion with pompous prose. Because whenever I read her drivel, my mind goes, Peee. Hello out there. I am trying to get through.
With cold, blunt analysis cradled in the warmth of reasoning, it's time for Johnny Walker Dread to straighten you out on a thing or two. Emanating all the way from exciting Las Vegas, Oklahoma, it's time for the Johnny Walker Dread Show.
By the way, please don't come in here telling me how crystal clear her prose is to make yourself out to be some sort of Renaissance man or woman. You can't snow me with pseudo-intellectualism. I have no tolerance for it. And yes, I have studied at the highest levels of academia. So don't tell me how I must be too uneducated to buy Allie's brand of bull. I don't want to hear it. And if you think her writing is clear, you don't know how to write. I know good writing when I see it. I know how to write crystal clear prose. Hers ain't it. Oh, before we begin reading the abstract of her dissertation, we need to read her disclaimer of sorts to those uncouth peons attempting to parse her scholarly works. To be clear, this abstract was written for experts within my discipline and field. It was not written for a lay audience, and this is not how I would communicate my ideas to the average person. Oh, excuse me. I didn't realize we were dealing with Einstein here, but as mere intellectual peasants, we'll do our best to slog through her arrogance. Oh, another thing. Notice that she calls herself Dr. Allie Louks. Come on, learn how this is done. You don't call yourself doctor. That's what others call you. It's a salutation. If you really want to be so obnoxious as to announce to all your social media plebeians that you are now one of the anointed ones, you label yourself Allie Louks, Ph.D. I can probably find her address by going to the local DMV and entering the plates Dr. Allie or Dr. Louks in the search tool. Tell me that I wouldn't find DR in her license plate somewhere. Of course, I think she's in the UK, so maybe things are a little bit different. Okay, here goes nothing. Literally. First of all, let's cut to the chase. How do I judge a dissertation abstract? Well, a few things. First, I want the PhD candidate to tell me what the issue is. What's being studied? What's this all about? And she does that. I hate her style, but she does it. It's some classes of people are assumed to smell bad, and therefore this induces a bias against them. The abstract repeats this notion ad nauseum. Then I want to know why I would care about her research. What's the point of all this? And on this point, she falls flat. She does mention, in far too many words, that if enough future authors write good things about the smells of those she considers oppressed, then we might not think they smell so bad, and we might look more kindlier upon them. I mean, it's something. Another thing I want to look for is, what did the person do? Surely the next paragraph will lay the groundwork for that objective. To this end, I look for the verbs. And she uses explore, focuses on, considers, conceptualize, discusses, address. Here's a tip for anyone writing proposals, whether they be grant or business proposals. Never use these verbs. You're begging for a grant or a contract from someone who isn't interested in giving you money to piddle around. But more on that later. So let's start.
This thesis studies how literature registers the importance of olfactory discourse, the language of smell, and the olfactory imagination it creates in structuring our social world.
Translation. In the past, some authors have mentioned how people smell. By language of smell, she means that we often use words like stink, pungent, and fragrant as adjectives. By olfactory imagination structuring our social world, she means that not only do we use these words to describe the smell, but also the people who give off these smells, which in turn affects how we perceive them. Why doesn't she just say so? She's trying to sound smart. I mean, does she talk like this?
The broad aim of this thesis is to offer an intersectional and wide-ranging study of olfactory oppression by establishing the underlying logics that facilitate smell's application in creating and subverting gender, class, sexual, racial, and species power structures.
Essentially, she's saying the same thing, but now relating the way we perceive people who smell certain ways to their sex, race, gender, and class. I don't know what she means by species power structure, but I have a gut feeling it means class structure.
I focus largely on prose fiction.
Why not just say fiction? I mean, we're not talking about films here.
From the modern and contemporary periods, so as to trace the legacy of olfactory prejudice into today and situate its contemporary relevance.
Okay, the books she will read for this study will span only a certain time period, because if she goes back too far in time, what smelled good or bad back then might be different today. Whatever.
I suggest that smell very often invokes identity in a way that signifies an individual's worth and status in an inarguable manner that short-circuits conscious reflection.
Okay, people who smell bad leave a bad impression on us even if we haven't really thought out why. And this could lead us to be biased against them even though they may be okay dudes otherwise.
This can be accounted for by acknowledging olfaction's strongly affective nature, which produces such strong bodily sensations and emotions that reflexivity is bypassed in favor of a behavioral or cognitive solution that assuages the intense feeling most immediately.
Pretty much says the same thing as the preceding sentence. Stop me if you hear something the least bit profound. Although I don't know how you would stop me because this is like a video. I guess you could hit the stop button on the player.
Olfactory disgust, therefore, tends to result in rejection, while harmful forms of olfactory desire may result in sublimination or subjugation.
Olfactory disgust is a fancy term for PU, and once again, she's pretty much repeating the same sentiment, that people who smell bad can be discriminated against because of it, regardless of their true merits. I wasn't familiar with sublimination outside the physics context, but it apparently means that our reaction to stinky people become the norm and therefore socially acceptable. That is, society as a whole accepts our reaction to their stink, which allows us to place these people beneath us and therefore control them. That's the subjugation part. I'm not sure I buy this argument, but okay.
My thesis is particularly attentive to tensions and ambivalences.
Okay, don't write like this. How about my thesis pays close attention to? You see how simple that sounds? Although I would prefer I pay close attention to.
So, let's do it again. My thesis is particularly attentive to tensions and ambivalences that complicate the typically bifurcated affective spectrum of olfactory experiences, drawing attention to displeasurable olfactory relations that have socio-political utility.
What does she mean by drawing attention to displeasurable olfactory relations that have socio-political utility? Dunno. Every time I try to parse it, my mind just drifts off, which was a common problem when reading her abstract, because it's written like crap.
I argue that literary fiction is not only an arena in which olfactory logics can be instantiated, but also a laboratory in which possibilities for new kinds of relations and connections can be fostered and tested.
What does this say? Well, people are disgusted by stinky people, and this disgust is reinforced by authors who make this connection between stink and disgust toward the people who stink. But it doesn't have to be that way. In the future can change this by making stinky people be the good guys in stories. I love her mention of the term laboratory and test, which simply means the books can be read and pondered. So what did she actually do in this research? Well, the second paragraph tries to tell us by citing the books she read in her study and what she did with them. But therein lies the problem. The second paragraph doesn't tell us. In fact, I doubt anything was really gained just by her choice of verbs. Check this out. Chapter 1 explores how smell can be used, blah, blah, blah. I can explore a cave, but no one gains anything from it other than myself. It's completely self-serving. Now, if I map the interior of the cave, that would provide benefit. The verbs she used to define her activity provide not even a hint of real action. She doesn't connect, construct, build, establish, or anything like that. Chapter 3 focuses on the intersectional olfactory. Focuses on, what does that mean? Did you analyze, summarize, develop? In Chapter 4, I conceptualize an oppressive olfactory logic. Conceptualize, that could mean anything. Chapter 5 discusses 2 forms of olfactory desire. Okay, that's a little better. And then finally, I address J.M. Coetzee's The Master of St. Petersburg. Address? Like, hello, boy. And finally, she argues for fiction's role in reorienting readers' habitual relations. Okay, argue is at least something. So Ali Louks basks in the controversy that her dissertation has generated. But this is not a good kind of controversy. She doesn't have a product that upsets commonly held notions of anything. No one ever held an opinion contrary to her findings, at least as far as I can tell. Rather, the controversy is centered on whether her research is worth a damn. And frankly, if the world was divided between those who valued my dissertation and those that ridiculed it, I would be embarrassed. But you can't embarrass the woke. There was a time when PhDs really meant something. Sure, the value of EDDs have long been mocked, but PhDs were typically held to a much higher standard. I struggled through 10 years of graduate school earning mine, all to find out that the ranks of PhDs are filled with nonsensical, bloated, insignificant fluff. Junk. In the end, I really detest her research. And yeah, the fact that someone can be handed a PhD from Cambridge for this crap is depressing as hell. In my next video, I'm going to show you an example of research on musical tone that I think would be worth doing, just to show you how the humanities can generate something valuable. Then I'll talk about some of the big brains in science and how they would have taken Ali's dissertations to the middle of the street, on it, and set it on fire. Like my video and subscribe to my channel.